Welcome back to another episode of the Cameras and Coffee podcast. I'm sitting here with Derek from DJ Productions, and we're going to talk about working together as Togs and DJs. Welcome, Derek.
Thank you, Kara.
Yeah, super excited to kind of go through all this. The two of us met at a wedding in Detroit. You guys were a lot of fun. I loved it. It was so great. You obviously know what you're doing with 34 years of experience.
Yeah,
So, yeah, let's kind of talk about that. Let's kind of talk about like I don't it's kind of a big question because it could be where you started or like how things have changed since you started.
yeah.
Kind of whatever you're comfortable talking with. Let's kind of cover that.
Yeah, I think the start and the history is important, especially for business owners. So I'll start from the beginning and make it as quick and fast and painless as possible. 16 years old and in high school, and a couple of friends had a DJ company, and they were just really into the sound equipment and the lighting, and they wanted somebody to actually play the music and get on the microphone. They hated the microphone. And I'm
Mm,
like, well, I can do it. And they're like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, let's try it. So we did. And we were getting $75 an event for schools. And eventually there was a family member getting married. And he's like, hey, why don't you DJ my wedding? And I'm like, I've never done a wedding. And, I'm 16 years old and actually kind of too stupid to be scared. And I'm like, okay, why not? And so did that. It was a great experience, and I'm like, I can make money doing this. So then at 17, borrowed $2,000 from that same family member to buy a sound system and leave the other two guys in the dust, because why split money three ways when you can have it yourself?
right.
Um, and then that's it. Just kept doing events from
Wow.
there, just as a side gig and a side hustle.
Yeah.
And then I was in finance for 18 years as a financial
Mm,
advisor and compliance officer, which taught me a lot about business. And I decided to go back to school in an audio engineering program at the community college, where I made a lot of really great contacts and met some DJs that were doing it full time and took a lot of advice from them. Then I saw a conference out in Las Vegas for mobile DJs. And I'm like,
mm.
let me go check this out. And at that point, I was doing $20,000 in business as a side hustle, which is great for vacations. And so I knew
Yeah.
there was something there, but I just never thought it was a full-time gig. And I don't know if you've experienced this or not, but you can sometimes have the wrong outsiders in your ears telling you that
Mm-hmm.
the 9 to 5 is the way to go. It's tough to be reliant upon yourself. DJing
Yep.
or photography or videography isn't a career. And you listen to those people because you respect those
Mm-hmm.
people until you're old enough and wise enough on your own to go, I can make a career out of this. So that's what
Mm-hmm.
Vegas did for me when I went out there. I met a bunch of DJs that were doing this full time and at scale. And
Mm.
I was reading the talent level in the room, and I didn't feel that they were any more talented than I was. They were just sharper from a business sense, and they understood what they needed
Mm.
needed to do. So I listened to a lot of those guys and said, I'm going to go after this and do this as a career while maintaining my family life and maintaining a day job. So the day
Yeah.
job went down to 4 days a week. Then it went down to 3 days
Mm.
a week. And then finally I was like, see you guys, I'm out of here. But I'm thankful enough that they allowed me to cut back on my hours because they knew this is what I wanted to do.
That's
So that's the
awesome.
history. So
Yeah.
here we are with 10 DJs on staff, and this is what I do full time. And I wake up with a smile on my face now.
I love that. It's definitely something where you have to realize, like, are you passionate about this? Because if you're ever at one point not passionate about it, it's going to be a job. It's not going to be something you love.
Yes.
And I think that's totally key because the hours are not ideal. Not ideal at all, especially for a family, and especially when it's a lot of weekends, a lot of late nights, that kind of stuff. I love how you said about like putting the people in the room. Like you were like, I can do this. We're no different. I think as a photographer, it's really hard because we can compare and contrast all the time. And there are ones where you're like, oh, how do you get like that or whatever? And a lot of times we're like, well, it's who you know, not what you know. And I think a lot of times you just have to keep trying to better yourself. And that's where I focus is I take a lot of how can I be better than I was last year
Yes.
or even a month ago? I think that's the key because everyone's on a different path. Everyone, you know, it's so hard because if you keep comparing, it can be very toxic to your mind, especially when you're owning your own business. But
Yes.
it's so true to get in that mindset of, can I make this a full time thing or is this just a side gig? And it is hard because you let go of that security a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I love that you went back to school. That's something I wish I would have done. I know it's not too late, but it's one of those things where I'm like, I wish I would have done the business side of things a little bit more. But um, now there's outsourcing, so that's always good too.
Yeah, yeah, and I will tell you, taking all these audio classes at the college is the first time in my life that school was easy for me, and then
Mm,
there were just A's everywhere, and that wasn't always the
yeah.
case for me.
No, me neither.
Yeah,
Yep. But when you're passionate about it and it's like starting to make sense because you're like really driven for it, I think it
yeah,
makes a huge difference
it
for
does,
sure.
it does.
So your kind of field has changed quite a bit in the last 34 years.
Yeah.
So what were you like, what did it look like when you got started as far as like picking music and using songs and all that? Because now it's a lot different. Like everything's on your computer, but back then were you like flipping through CDs and or were you like back where you were like cassette tapes, records, like all of that?
All of the above. This shelf behind me is loaded with albums that I used
Love
to
that.
carry to events. Crates of them, lugging the
Oh
crates
my
and
gosh.
learning how to mix on those. And this is DJing on vinyl is where all of the new DJ computer programs come from. You have
Mm,
what they call crates, where you put your digital music that comes from carrying crates of records. They have cue points within the program, which comes from actually placing stickers on your vinyl where you wanted to start the music.
mm,
They will digitally calculate the BPM, which is beats per minute, or the speed or tempo of the song. Well, we had to do that manually back in the day. So a lot of my albums have a sticker on it
crazy.
with the track number with the beats per minute. So I can line them up by that and be able to mix them. Um, from vinyl, it was onto cassette tapes. Actually, a company I worked for in Muskegon around your area, he had all cassette tapes, and so he
Mm.
contracted me to work off of those. And I had three dual cassette decks. And the night before, I would sit there and rewind to what I anticipated that the crowd would want to hear, or what
Mm.
they may request.
Wow.
And so I'd rewind all those and cue them up. So that was really challenging.
Yeah.
Um, but it was easier for him with music. He could record onto those tapes and have several setups and send out several DJs.
Mhm.
Then it was on to a combination of vinyl and CDs, and Napster and LimeWire, where you could start
Yes.
downloading music and viruses
Mhm.
on your computer.
Yeah, right.
Um, yeah, and get music that way for the one off. Um,
Mm.
and then onto the digital era, and now I'm lucky enough to have where it's turntables, but it's digital. So I have the feel of
Mhm.
vinyl, which I prefer, and the convenience of the computer rather than carrying 6 or 7 of these crates around with me.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's come a long way.
That's a lot. So, do you feel like back then you needed extra help, whereas now do you feel like it's something you could do on your own? Like, how does that change over time?
Back in
Because
the
that's a
day,
lot of equipment.
yeah, like I definitely needed help, but I never had it.
Mm.
I mean, even the equipment was heavier. All the speakers now, the amplifiers are built in, but before you had to
Mhm.
carry 2 50-pound amplifiers along with these huge speaker stacks.
Yeah.
Everything is just so much more compact and convenient. Um, but it wasn't easy back in the day. So it's definitely a
Yes.
love that had to go along with it.
Yeah. I think, yeah, over time things do get easier because I feel like things get smaller and smaller in some ways, but then other ways they get larger as far as equipment and things like that. But for sure. So do you find now that there's more creativity because you can do things more digitally?
That's subjective.
Okay.
Um, I I I personally think that there is to an extent. Like you can do more things with the music and manipulate it more,
Yeah.
but when you had two turntables, you had to be more creative
Mm,
to get those manipulations and those mixes and those certain things that you wanted to do. So I think the creativity these days is easier,
mm.
but you maybe had to be more creative back in the day. I hope that makes sense. It makes sense in my head.
No, that's good because I think about even with photography, like understanding like the basis from years ago really affects how you are today because you don't realize like the things that have been more convenient, but if you don't understand the parts of the past, like you're not going to really understand the inner workings of how things work now. And so I feel like that definitely makes a difference when it comes to those things. Do you teach other DJs or is it more like I just feel like you have a lot of knowledge in there or is it more like you just are training your own employees or how does that work?
Yeah, training the staff. I have opened things up to instruction, and have helped a couple of people along the way. And I share a lot of information online.
Mm,
Um, not not a ton. I'm getting more comfortable with sharing. I think this is something that I'm so comfortable with that I never realized how much I actually knew.
mm,
And as far as DJs are concerned, I just sort of made the assumption that everybody knew these things.
right.
As it turns out, they don't. So it's just something that I always took for granted, and I'm just starting to understand that I do have some things to share,
Yeah.
which is kind of cool.
So what do you think makes a good DJ? Because like people could hire someone and just cue. I had this the other day where someone just like queued up Pandora and like was playing music. And there were moments where I was like, hey, go put some music on right now. Or hey, we're starting speeches. Can you go turn the music off? Like it was some of those things where I get like notice um from an event standpoint because I've done a lot of events. I've planned a lot of events
Yeah.
and kind of know how moments happen, but what would you say makes a good DJ as far as um for those moments, weddings specifically?
Yeah, yeah. I think there's two parts of that. One is the MC side of things, and one is the DJ
Mm,
side of things with the music. As far
yeah.
as the MC side of things, you you have to be involved and let people know that you're there for them and keep
Mm,
people informed and keep them entertained without being without being overbearing. Like
mhm.
you want to be part of the party. You
Yeah.
don't want to be the party. It's not the
Mhm.
MC or DJ show. It's the show of the bride and groom, the bride and the bride, the groom and the groom, whatever couple it may be. And you need to be able to put the spotlight on them and keep people entertained at the same time. The
Yeah.
DJ side of things plays the same way, but I really believe that if you're a DJ, you need to be able to mix music and
Mm,
not put a list on and play a full song and
yeah.
pause and play another full song. It's just a complete dip in energy. And
Yes.
you want to keep the ear entertained and do things that people haven't heard before, but also
Mhm.
within the parameters of what the couple wants.
Yep.
And paying attention can do things. So, for example, the wedding that I worked with you, this wasn't planned ahead of time, but the best man was doing his speech and they were talking about how they would get together and they would watch Game of Thrones. And immediately I'm like, I'm queuing this song up. And as
Yeah.
soon it was the first song I played at dinner was Game of Thrones. And like he just Sean, it was his name. Sean
Yeah.
just looked over at me, locked eyes. It was just a big smile on his face.
Yeah. For sure, for sure. And I think that's like such a big thing as far as vendors in general is having a mind of service rather than completing what you have to do. Because there was a wedding I worked with and the DJ, he did both MC and DJ. All he did at dinner was talk about himself
Mm.
and sit there and talk about all these things he's done and things like that. And my friend who I was working with, literally he was like sitting next to her. She had the body language like sitting like this eating her food, and he still wasn't getting the clues
Yeah.
of okay. Like, and those are moments where you're like, okay, I would never hire this DJ or recommend this DJ again because like he just wants to do his thing and figure it out. And yeah, that totally, totally. Um, what is something you wish that couples knew when they start working or before they start working with you or while they're working with you?
Yeah. I just want them to know that I want to make every day unique and special,
Mm,
and I want to make it as smooth as possible. But at the same time, really, really fun. So, like from start to finish, booking process, planning process, I want everything to be just super smooth. And I want them to understand that I just don't show up the day of with a set that I've played at a million weddings.
yeah.
And I study the things that they ask me for, the music that they ask me for. You know, I don't hit those do not plays. I want to know their must plays. I want to know that song that they love to dance to in high school. I want to know their
Mm.
favorite shows like Game of Thrones, which they didn't divulge to me beforehand. But normally I get that information ahead of time.
Yeah.
Um, just study their whole event to make sure that I do the best job I can possibly do. It just needs to be a fun, inclusive event, and it needs to be stress
Mm.
free and just really, really smooth.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that is huge in creating a moment because that's what you're doing is you think about like if you were to watch a movie or something and it was completely like silent on the music end of things, those moments would not be the same. Like a
Right.
score to a movie makes all the difference. And that's kind of like what you're doing on a wedding day is creating those moments through music. And if not done right, it can totally change the emotion in those moments too.
Yeah. No, that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah. Um, so what would you say would be your best piece of advice for photographers you're working with? Like what makes a good photographer videography relationship when you're working a wedding together?
Um, Mutual respect and a level of
Mm,
trust, and just understanding that we're there for a common goal, and that's to do
mhm.
right by the client. So just understanding that, and it's not like the photographer versus the videographer versus the DJ. It's
Yeah,
it's a
exactly.
it's a team effort. So, go in and make friends with that. That's your coworker for that day.
Mhm.
One's not the boss of the other, and just make sure that each other are comfortable. And this just popped in my head. All over DJ forums, you'll see DJs complaining about where photographers put their stuff. We spend all
Yeah.
this time making sure our setup is so nice, and then a photographer sticks their bag on a speaker. Well, don't stick it on a speaker. Okay, I agree with that one. But like, where else is the photographer supposed to put their things?
Mhm.
There's stuff already there. So just tell them, hey, if you want to put your stuff back behind here with us, you're more than welcome to do that. Like, that's just welcoming. Don't do DJ
Yeah.
versus photographer. Work together.
Yeah. And I feel like they always think like, "Ooh, behind the DJ booth, like nobody's looking back there." So that's like their mindset, but it is your work environment, so you have to think about that too. Like I can't have all this here and still do my job. So, yeah, just talking about that off the bat I think is huge and kind of creating that relationship, introducing each other like right away is huge cuz for me, I reach out to a DJ honestly prior to a wedding because I'm doing a timeline and I leave the entire reception part of a timeline to the DJ because I'm like, I don't need to know that. I just need to show up and do my job. Everything before that, I need to know like minute by minute, basically. But I'm reaching out to them to introduce myself ahead of time just so like on the wedding day we can put faces with names, but also say like what do you need or what do you need from me? Even though it might not be anything, but ahead of time it just creates that relationship ahead of time. And I know it takes work and takes effort prior, but it's so huge in creating a great relationship the day of so that you're working together and not against each other. So,
It
yeah,
is.
for
And
sure.
then think about it from a business standpoint. You just started
Hmm.
networking with somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's huge from a business standpoint. So not only is it
Yep.
good for the event, but it's good for business.
Yeah, for sure. And that person is probably going to take that respect and anytime they post a picture of like dancing or whatever, they're going to be like sure to tag you. And I know that's like something that photographers get so frustrated is when they're not tagged in their images.
Mm,
And sometimes, it happens, and I understand. I was just talking with someone on a podcast episode yesterday about it, but it's one of those things where they're not going to forget who you were because working with you was great. So that's another point where you're going to share each other's handles and things when you post on social media because of the working environment. That was so great.
hmm.
And they're going to be sharing, like the photographer is going to be sharing with their couples that specific DJ because they're going to know I loved working with them. If you need someone, here's a great vendor
Yeah,
for that option.
yeah.
Um, so let's kind of pivot and talk about some of the songs at wedding receptions.
Okay.
So, is there a song specifically that you will not play?
Yeah, there's a couple, but I'm gonna put an asterisk next to this, and that asterisk is if this is on the couple's must play or the couple requests it, like I'm gonna play it. And
Yeah.
right off the bat, the chicken dance is one of them. I'm sure you're you're aware of that. Like it's just horrible. It needs to be left. Back in the day, I just don't enjoy it.
I haven't
Um,
seen the chicken dance in a really long time.
yeah. I did have to play it once last year, but actually, it wasn't even at a wedding. It was at a German fest type event. So it made
That I get. That I
yeah, it made
get.
sense for that event. Another
Yeah.
song, just personal preference, is Dance Monkey. Tones and I are familiar with Dance Monkey. It just strikes a nerve with me, and I absolutely despise that song.
Oh my gosh, I
I
love
don't.
it.
It's the voice. It's just something about it. So yeah, that one I won't play. I won't play either. Um,
What okay, and then let's like talk about is there a one that you find is very popular on multiple couples do not playlist
yeah,
other than the chicken dance?
yeah. So actually, I've noticed in the last couple of years, about 50 to 60% of couples are saying no line dances. Um,
Oh,
no Cupid
interesting.
shuffle, no cha-cha slide, no wobble. And I don't know if that's industry wide or just the clients that we attract.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's been, and it's funny, they almost feel bad about it. They're like, we don't really like line dances. Could you not do that? I'm like, yeah, think about how many times we've heard them. I'm completely down.
Right? Yeah,
Yeah.
we're good with that.
Yeah. And it's, dances for a DJ are a tool that can become a crutch. Some
Mhm.
DJs think that they have to play a line dance first to pack the dance floor. And if that
Yep.
doesn't work, they'll play another line dance and it'll be back to back and trying to get people to the dance floor. And that can actually work against you because
Yep.
immediately people think, okay, this guy isn't a very good DJ. Like I don't need line dances to pack a dance floor. And I
Yeah.
want to come out swinging as early as possible at an event because if I'm
Yeah.
packing that dance floor with good music right up front, like I don't save anything. I just let it all
Mhm.
out and people are less likely to bombard us with requests. Like this guy's got it.
Yeah.
So that's our approach. And yeah, line dances have been just hitting the door lately.
I will say nothing kills an upbeat moment than going from like hardcore dancing music to just pivot to a slow song because it's always like, why did they do that? Like everyone was having so much fun on the dance floor. Like, and then all of a sudden it like clears or I don't know. It changes sometimes, but it's funny because I've been with my share of DJs and I will say the ones that have all the energy, the ones that are creative, know what they're doing, those are the ones that are like the best as far as keeping the party going. Um
And
you
what you
can
said,
definitely tell.
yeah, what you said was spot on about the severe drop in energy going from here to
Mhm.
here. And I was at one wedding in the last 5 years as a guest, and I was looking forward to watching and learning. And I'm always open to what other people are doing.
It's so
And
hard too.
I was trying, and I wasn't allowed to make any comments or anything like that, and I
Oh,
didn't. I
no.
kept it to myself. But the one thing I did notice is that the DJ was playing really, really good music. He wasn't a mixed DJ, and he was playing good music in theory. And at one point, he was playing Love Shack, which is one of those traditional songs that most older people enjoy. You can get people on a dance floor.
Mhm.
And then right after that, he played Dancing Queen. And Dancing Queen is like iconic and should pack your dance floor. And it's a great sing along. But he went from this really fast up tempo Love Shack
Mhm.
pause down into Dancing Queen. And it kind of shocked the dance floor. And for the first time ever, I saw Dancing Queen clear the dance floor. People were confused by it. And it's
Mhm.
like it's exactly what you said, going from a fast song to a slow song. And it
Mhm.
just didn't work. And that's
Yeah.
one of those transitions that you need to pay attention to.
Yeah. Well, and definitely when you're mixing too, like that makes a huge difference because you're going to be finding something with like a similar tempo or like can kind of go into that. Um and those two just they don't glide.
No, they didn't
um
glide at all. But two great
yes.
songs separate from each other.
Yes. Yes. And I'm noticing more ABBA coming back um since they released the Gold album. There's a lot of um Gen Zs that are
Yes.
loving it too. It's
Yes.
just very interesting.
Yeah.
So what would you say are like your top 5 popular songs at weddings nowadays?
Yeah. So what I'm seeing is we just talked about it, Dancing Queen and ABBA, the revival of ABBA. Like
Mhm.
everybody just loves it. Is it ABBA? I say ABBA. It's ABBA. I guess that's the Michigan in me.
Yep.
And pretty much any Taylor Swift, but like really love story. It's a
Yeah.
huge sing along. I had a groom that said he hated Taylor Swift, but the other groom, it was his favorite. And he's
Oh
like,
my
okay,
gosh.
he can have one Taylor Swift. And they're like, okay, cool. So I played Love Story, and the groom that didn't like Taylor Swift was just singing his brains out.
Stop it.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh, I
uh,
love it.
yeah, I had to
You're
make a
like, "I won
comment.
that over."
Yeah, I called him out on the microphone. We had a pretty good laugh about it. He was
Oh my
caught up
goodness.
in the moment, and it was okay with him. Um, yeah, by Usher is one that people always respond to and they love. Mr. Brightside is huge at weddings.
I
Um,
can't believe that's still going on. Because 'Cause isn't
yeah,
that song about a breakup?
it is. It is. Yeah, and I have a lot of people that want that as their last song just because it's this
Mm,
iconic type song.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't really pay attention to what the lyrics are saying too much. I just hear the beat and the
Keep
rhythm
the
and
beat
the
moving.
melody.
Yeah.
But yeah, people love that song at weddings.
I
And then
love it.
another one is low, apple bottom jeans, boots with the
Oh
fur,
my gosh, yes.
and all those cover all generations, and people love it. My most requested song for the last 2 years was actually "Party in the USA."
Oh, funny.
Yeah, I was shocked when I looked at the numbers. I was like, "No way."
Oh my gosh. Miley, you're gonna age us out.
Yeah,
Everyone's gonna
yeah,
everyone's gonna keep playing Miley for years to come. Oh
yep,
man.
yep,
At least it's not Achy Breaky Heart from her father.
yeah. No kidding. There's a
Remember
client.
those days?
Yeah. Oh, there's a client out there somewhere that wants to hear that. So I'll be ready.
Oh my goodness. So, do you have any fun stories, or wild stories from your career you'd wanna share?
I have a wild, not so fun story I
Oh,
can
geez.
share.
Okay.
Yeah, I was out doing a wedding prior to COVID, prior to lockdowns,
Okay.
and I'm outside doing cocktail hour with another DJ. There were two of us at this event, as I like to do most of the time, and it was almost time to head in for dinner, and I wanted to check with the bride to see if that was okay. But she was sitting on a covered porch, and I could picture it, and she was talking to her grandfather. And I started walking over there, and something hit me, and it was like, nah, don't interrupt that conversation. So I walked back. I waited till that conversation was over, and then I talked to her, and we moved in for dinner. Well, fast forward into a bunch of commotion at dinner. The grandfather had a heart attack,
Oh,
and
man.
they got him down on the ground. And at this point in time, I found out that there were a lot of physicians at this wedding, and I could see him performing CPR. And I had to just get out of the room. Like I couldn't handle what was going on. And he did pass away at dinner at the wedding.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And so after about an hour of sitting outside, the family got together and they said, look, Grandpa would have wanted us to continue this party and not stop it um, for any reason, especially because of him. So as a family, we decided we're going to the bar, we're going to do some shots, and then we're going to get this party going. And they did. And it was an epic party, and it was a crazy moment, and I never want to experience that again. But looking back on that conversation and something telling me not to interrupt it is
Yeah.
just kind of crazy to me.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's oh.
Yeah, last
I and
last
that's gotta be a
conversation.
really hard one to pivot and, like, kind of create like, know what to do in that moment.
Yeah.
I had something very similar happen this past year where we were doing in a huge event and, getting ready to do a photograph. It was kind of like a red carpet moment,
Mhm.
and a girl had a seizure, like, right on the red carpet.
Oh,
And it was right after I did my like, a photo, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, did my
did the
flash, like,
flash
put
do
her
it? Yeah.
into a seizure?" And they're like, "No, it wouldn't have." Because I was like, "Oh my gosh." And then taking that moment and, like, trying to figure out how to, like, because I mean, there were hundreds of people lined up and trying to keep that from being a huge thing, but also keeping them safe, and those are never moments you ever wanna repeat for sure, but it
No.
is one of those things, like, how do you come back from that? But I think that's a testament to who you are too, is just, like, you put your client first and put in that moment, and I love that you just gave her that moment. Because there's times where I look and think, "We got a job to do, we have a schedule," but it doesn't matter when there's magic moments like that. Like, I would have probably done the same thing, like, let that happen, if they're sitting privately or whatnot. I can kind of read cues of my couples and kind of see like this is a moment they want torn out of. And
Yeah.
so I'll be like, hey guys, I need you a sec. Or it's a moment where I'm like,
Yeah, you
let's
can
just let this
tell.
moment pass.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
for
can
sure.
tell. It's weird. I don't know if that comes with experience or it's just like a human
I don't know. I
sense.
feel like that's a gift that some people have of discernment, like just to kind of
Mm,
know, like these are moments that need to just happen.
yeah.
So yeah, for sure. Um, so coming from that, kind of moving on, what would you say is like your photographer hot take? Something that maybe you don't agree with, or you do agree with, something from there. Like, what would you say?
Yeah. My hot take is that photographers have more of an impact on an event than they realize. And
Mm,
having an upbeat, happy photographer, it 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 rubs off on everyone.
mm,
And you kind of set the tone. You're the first people with the clients, maybe besides makeup and hair, but yeah, you're right there with them getting pictures of that.
yeah,
And so you're kind of leading them through that day up until the point of the reception. And
yeah.
so I mean, you have the ability to start putting them in a good mood before anybody else. And
Hmm.
and then just being that face when the DJ walks in and just being kind to them. And so you have more of an impact on the overall feeling and attitude of the event than maybe you even realize.
Hmm. Yeah, that's so true because like if I am super nervous or agitated or something, like everyone's going to feel that because I'm the one directing things. I mean, if you have a wedding planner or coordinator, like obviously they're going to be there too, but I mean, when you build a relationship with your couple, they're looking to you in those moments a lot of the time and seeing like, okay, what's next or what do I need to do? And if you're
Right.
acting nervous, they're going to be nervous. And that's one of the things like I do to reassure my couples is, hey, if you see me stressed or nervous, then you can be stressed or nervous, but I'm not right now. So, like, just relax. It's okay. Until you see me freaking out, there's no reason for you to freak out.
Yeah.
So, it is a lot of those types of things for sure. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Let's see here. um, yeah, I think I've gotten through all of our questions. Is there anything else that you want to bring up that we haven't covered?
um yeah, actually, one of the questions we didn't touch on is what have I noticed that makes a horrible experience
Oh,
um,
yeah.
working with photographers? But actually, I'd like to flip that onto you first. Like, what
Yeah.
makes it a horrible experience for you working with a DJ? Like, I think this is important for DJs to hear.
Mhm. Well, I think it's really funny because the moment I met you for the first time and I was like, "You must get this a lot," is like the lighting. So a lot of times it's like, yeah, we want party lighting, we want all that. Um, but it's definitely one of those things. And I've been to ones where there's like a DJ booth like up in the top of the reception space. So like you never talk with the DJ. And that was a
Mm.
horrible experience because they had an MC on the ground, but I never got a chance to talk with who was doing that. And there was like a huge giant spotlight that came out. And I was just like, okay, it would have been nice to know that was going to happen. I did not know because this was my first time here and my lighting was all to crap. And so it was moments where I like was like pointing to the couple like scoot over out of the spotlight for a sec just so I can get an iconic photo of like their first dance or something like that because it just washes you out. It was definitely like theater lighting is what I like to say. And so a lot of times I'll contact the venue or whatnot ahead of time to talk about that. But I love how when I met you, you're like, don't worry, I won't turn on any color lights until after the main dances. And I was like, have you been yelled at like plenty times to like bring that up right away? It made me laugh. But yeah, nowadays, and I think this also goes with photographers that need to be intentional and know what they're doing because a lot of times when you have like those laser lights, when you have like a mirrorless camera, it can ruin your mirrorless camera, like
Mm.
shooting those right into your lens. And I think a lot of times photographers just need to know like don't shoot straight into the DJ booth then. Like change your angle, kind of figure that out. But if you're a beginner and don't know, that's an issue. So I think just communicating ahead of time with each other is huge about like what the plan is and what you're doing for lighting and so forth. But yeah, I think a horrible working experience, probably I guess when you're just going against each other,
Yeah.
and there's no communication, it just makes that hard. Um I wouldn't say I've ever had a horrible experience with a DJ. Um But there have been ones where there's like pain points where
Yeah.
you're just like, ooh. And there's moments where I'll say to the couple, like, I'll be that person for you to go talk to the DJ or something like that. But yeah, I wouldn't say I've ever had like a horrible experience.
That's
So
interesting. You've had events where you tell the clients that you'll go talk to the DJ for them?
So there were moments where it was like a venue was handling, it wasn't like an actual DJ, it was the venue was
Ah,
handling the
okay.
music.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Otherwise, I would say, yeah, that's a direct line. Like I wouldn't
Yeah.
step in there. But I had one where the venue was handling music and at one point the bride was in getting ready and she's like, they're playing all of our dancing music right now. like for all of our scheduled dances. Like, why are they doing
Oh,
that right
jeez.
now? And so those are moments where I'm like, I'll go be that person and talk to them for you and kind of figure out
Another
what's going
reason to
on.
hire a DJ and not use a playlist.
Yeah. Well, and there's some venues here in West Michigan where they're like, that's a service we offer, and you're like, ooh,
Yeah.
like, let them hire a DJ. Why do you have to be the music person? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, very interesting. But, well, last question for you. Where can we find you on the web, Derek?
I'm all over the web. Uh, Instagram at DJDC Productions and TikTok at DJDC Productions. And I'm constantly posting to TikTok. It's a great platform.
Yeah.
And you just reach a lot of people that way, and it's fun.
Yeah. And if you want to guest songs in one note, definitely go find Derek. That's
Yep.
what you'll find a lot of. I
Yep.
love it.
Yep.
Um, for sure. And then if you're wanting to find the podcast, you can find us at karahaynesphotography.com/podcast or on Instagram and TikTok at Cameron's and Coffee Podcast. Thanks, Derek. This is so fun. Great conversation. Things that are definitely necessary to know going into wedding planning for sure. So thank you for being on today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, friends, until next time, we'll see you on the next episode of the Cameras and Coffee podcast. Until then, cheers.